Here in Mindshift Mechanics, we talk about human and organizational performance, how these principles apply to work, how they apply to like home, how they apply to like everything in life. And so, George, I'm going to show you a video. And I don't really know how it applies to human and organizational performance. But on the other hand, I just said human and organizational performance applies to all that we do. So let's take a video. Let's take a watch of these. Let's watch these two guys doing something, and then let's talk about how we think these principles apply.
This is interesting.
I mean, it looks clearly like this guy on the left is gonna win.
Yeah.
Right, the guy with the Sprite bottles. The other guy's got the Coke bottles. I mean, I'd say at this moment, like, we know who the victor is going to be. We know whose method is better. I will say my feet are tired from watching this.
Yeah, right.
Oh my gosh, George. Unexpected, come from behind.
Right.
Right. Maybe what he gets as his prize is all those bottles of pop. So, George, I said I didn't know clearly how principles of human and organizational performance apply. But as you were watching that video, what were some of your thoughts as that was unfolding?
Well, what I was thinking about was, if they're all equally spaced, they have the same number, they're all going to have to make the same number of trips in the same distance. So they should have finished in a dead tie. So I don't know if one of them had figured out the key may be maybe a 0.5% difference in the one guy's performance made him the winner. It couldn't have been very big.
All right, so that's interesting. So what I heard from you there is you think they generally have the same process. You've only seen this one time. Your observation is they have the same process, and the differentiating element was one person apparently maybe just a little bit faster athlete or something.
Yeah. Because mathematically they all had to travel the same distance. So maybe he's faster runner.
Okay.
He did his long ones faster than the guy. So maybe there's a strategy around that. Maybe you do the long ones at the beginning when you're fresh, and then the shorter towards the end. Maybe that was a 0.5% difference.
On my mind, when thinking about how human and organizational performance applies to this, is maybe the reaction of management to gathering incomplete data and making a decision.
That's a really good a point, Sam, because it depends on when you walk by. If you walk by in the first half of the thing, you'd say, oh, clearly the guy on the left's way ahead, outperforming the other guy. I think it depends on when you kind of observe the behavior. Because in an organization, typically you're not there. If you're in management, you're not there all the time.
That's right.
You just drop in, you get a snapshot.
Oh, you're really speaking to what I understand, right? Because if I was like making my weekly reports and I had to be putting in like cycle counts and weekly reports, operator, the left operator, what's his current bottles per case count, right? 16 bottles in the case. Well, operator on the right side is only at 3 bottles on the case. And I know that, if the weekly reports were showing the progress, there would be a question about what is wrong with the person on the right.
That's very true. And in this case, they just took a different approach, which ended up to be in the long run. So that's the danger of just having little snapshots, right?
Okay, so we're going to watch how they start. And what we're going to analyze here is, does the person on the left have it? And then we'll go watch the person on the right at the end and see if they have a different method of filling up the case for the bottles that are the closest to the case. Using one hand. He's reaching. He's still using just his left hand. Okay, so I'm still watching this person on the left. I'm not really even watching the guy on the right. Except for I've noticed the one on the left, he's only using his left hand. And he's using his left hand to pick up the bottle, and he's using his left hand to transfer the bottle into the case. Not that it matters, but he's also working the closest side of the case to him, right? He's not. And in a way, he's leaving the most difficult part for the last. Again, it should not matter, I think.
I see something.
What did you see, George?
I believe the guy on the left did not change hands. The bottle did not go from one hand to the other. The guy on the right at the end passed it, and he used both hands. And that, I think, was the difference. His technique.
Let's watch it. Can I watch it? I'm queued up to watch. We're watching the end. And I'm watching the guy on the right in the pale green. And I think what your observation is that rather than using one hand, he does.
Yeah, go the very front and see how the guy on the left started off, and then we can see if. So he only uses one hand.
One hand, left hand, pick it up, and to put it in the case. And he still, and he never has two hands touch the bottle anywhere along the process.
And now you could jump to the end if you want and see how the guy at the end finished it up. See, he's switching from hand to hand.
And he doesn't have to do any foot movement. So there may have been some difference in athletic performance of the folks, right? But I think we see a difference in process performance. My takeaway, I've already said it, but my takeaway is if you were looking at incremental data on the weekly report, you would think the person on the left had a vastly better process.
And it was clear the guy on the right's technique was faster at the end, where he could take from one hand to the next and not have to physically move as far. So he's able to be faster. But you did not see the brilliance of his approach if you would have stopped in earlier, right? You had to be there at the end.
That's right. So I guess for my take, this is a sort of a difficult message to take because it's so personality based, but I think that patience is a part of a healthy human and organizational performance culture, right? Patience to, let the situation manifest, and so we can make, decisions with, you've heard this thing, an effective leader has to make decisions on 80% of the data, right?
Yeah.
In fact, let's do something here. I don't know if you've heard that. An effective leader has to make decisions on 80% of the data. I think the risk often is that turns into making a decision on 20% of the data.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see what 80%. Let's just try to find what 80. Well, okay. So 1 minute 14-second video. They start at They start at the 1 second. They start right at it. Okay, so 80% of an 84-second video is how many?
67.2 seconds.
All right, so we're going to go to 67.2 seconds or 67 seconds of this video. And that would be the representative of 80% of the information. And a leader, you've heard this concept, leaders should be making a decision on 80% of the information. If at 80% of the information, at 67 seconds in this video, would you have had information that told you that, at a minimum, that told you that these two methods are roughly the same in terms of productivity? Trying to get there. Well, now look at that.
I would say the guy on the right is slightly ahead at this point.
We got. I don't know. No, I think that at 80% of the data. First, here's what we know. At 80% of the data, it is vastly different than at 50. Maybe at 50% of the data, right? In this case, I see on the left, I think I see 3 open slots on the left.
Yeah. No, you're right. The guy on the left clearly was ahead at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think 4 open slots in the case on the right.
Yeah.
Okay. At this point, 80% of the data makes it look like they are roughly the same. The guy on the left is a little bit better. If we just go back to 50% of the data, so that would be 84-second video. That would be at 42 seconds.
Oh, it's going to even be worse, right?
Right. So if you've got 50% of the data, I see, I would say visually you can just see that the one on the left looks much better, right? In terms of effective process. Okay, so what do we get from that? I guess I'm saying my takeaway is I think a part of steady leadership of a human and organizational performance culture has an element of patience. And if you follow that 80% data rule of thumb, 80% of data in this case gives you a much better indication of the processes than making a decision in the first half of the video.
Especially if you compare right where they were at 20% to where they are at 80%.
Well, I'd like to have what I'd like to hear in the comments is for people who have had maybe a similar career experience where they feel like a situation was judged prematurely if the situation had been left to play out, the data may have shown a different result. And, here in Mindshift Mechanics, we talk about human and organizational performance, trying to apply these principles to everything in life. And if you think there should be more conversations of this quality, like this video, put in the comments what your own reaction is, and please share this video.